Lake Cadagno, a window to Earth's ancient past. A poisonous revolution, the birth of oxygen. Around 3 billion years ago, Earth's biosphere was a very different place. Life was simple, consisting only of single-celled organisms that had adapted to the harsh, anoxic, oxygen-free conditions of the planet. But then, a tiny evolutionary breakthrough set off a chain reaction that would forever change the world. A single-celled photosynthetic bacterium, an ancestor of today's cyanobacteria, began producing a strange new chemical as a byproduct of its metabolism. This gas was unlike anything the planet had seen before. It reacted aggressively with other elements, corroded certain compounds, and most importantly, was lethally toxic to most forms of life at the time. This gas was oxygen. Over the course of hundreds of millions of years, these bacteria thrived, multiplying exponentially and saturating Earth's oceans with oxygen. As their population expanded, so too did their output, gradually transforming the chemistry of the planet's waters. What had once been a world ruled by anaerobic life, organisms that thrived in an oxygen-free environment, became increasingly hostile to its own inhabitants. Oxygen, once a rare and insignificant trace gas, became the dominant force shaping Earth's biosphere. At first, the excess oxygen dissolved into the oceans, reacting with iron to form rust, which settled onto the seafloor in massive deposits. But eventually, the oxygen concentration exceeded the ocean's ability to absorb it. Slowly but surely, oxygen began seeping into the atmosphere, and when it did, it reacted with methane, a potent greenhouse gas that had helped keep Earth warm. This triggered a devastating consequence, a global ice age that encased the planet in frozen desolation for millions of years. This period, known as the Great Oxygen Catastrophe or the Oxygen Crisis, was one of the most dramatic mass extinctions in Earth's history. The vast majority of anaerobic organisms perished, unable to survive in the increasingly oxygen-rich environment. But out of this chaos, a new kind of life began to emerge, one that not only tolerated oxygen, but relied on it for survival. Over the next billion years, these oxygen-adapted organisms would evolve into the complex multicellular life forms that now dominate Earth. Today, oxygen is the very foundation of most life on the planet, essential for everything from the metabolism of animals to the growth of plants. But while Earth has long since transitioned into an oxygen-rich world, there are still places where the ancient, oxygen-averse way of life persists, hidden in the depths of our oceans, buried in sediments, and, perhaps most intriguingly, within a remote lake in the Swiss Alps. Lake Cadagno, a portal to Earth's prehistoric oceans, nestled high in the Piora Valley of Switzerland, over 1,900 meters, 6,200 feet, above sea level, lies Lake Cadagno. At first glance, it seems like any other alpine lake. Its surface glistens in the sunlight, surrounded by rugged peaks and verdant meadows. It is a picturesque body of water, home to thriving fish populations and the occasional adventurous swimmer. But beneath its tranquil exterior lies something truly extraordinary. Lake Cadagno is one of the world's rare meromictic lakes, bodies of water that contain two distinct, unmixed layers. Unlike most lakes, where wind and seasonal changes churn the water, distributing oxygen and nutrients throughout, Cadagno's layers remain permanently separated. And it is this isolation that makes it a natural time capsule, preserving conditions that mirror those of Earth's oceans billions of years ago. The upper layer of the lake, known as the Mixolympnion, behaves like a conventional freshwater lake. It is well oxygenated, relatively warm, and teeming with fish. But just 13 meters, 43 feet below the surface, a dramatic shift occurs. The water abruptly becomes denser, darker, and entirely devoid of oxygen. This lower layer, called the monomolimnion, is a stagnant, sulfur-rich pool that supports an ecosystem more reminiscent of Earth's primordial past than modern-day freshwater lakes. The chemistry behind the divide. Lake Cadagno's peculiar structure is the result of its unique geological surroundings. Rainwater flows into the lake from two distinct sources, each taking a different path that determines its final composition. Some of the water trickles directly from the surrounding granitic mountains, feeding the lake's oxygen-rich upper layer. The rest, however, seeps into the region's dolomite rock formations, porous limestone deposits rich in salts like sulfate. As the water percolates through these rocks, it undergoes a chemical transformation, losing its oxygen and becoming infused with dissolved salts. This denser, anoxic water eventually resurfaces through underground springs, forming the lake's stagnant, oxygen-free bottom layer. Because this bottom layer is significantly heavier than the oxygenated water above, the two never mix. This separation has persisted for thousands of years, maintaining a stable, two-tiered ecosystem where ancient anaerobic life forms continue to thrive. A glimpse into an ancient world. Within Lake Cadagno's anoxic depths, scientists have discovered thriving colonies of sulfur-oxidizing bacteria, microorganisms remarkably similar to those that once dominated Earth's oceans before the rise of oxygen. Among them is Chromatium okeani, a striking pink-hued bacterium that photosynthesizes using sulfur instead of oxygen, much like its ancient ancestors. These bacteria form dense, undulating mats at the boundary between the two layers, creating an eerie, otherworldly landscape. Here, a delicate balance exists. Chromatium okeani absorbs the toxic hydrogen sulfide emitted by other anaerobic bacteria and in turn produces organic material that fuels the ecosystem. Despite the stark divide between the lake's two layers, the organisms within them are not entirely isolated from one another. Tiny zooplankton from the oxygenated upper waters make daring forays into the anoxic depths, feasting on Chromatium okeani before retreating back to safety. This cyclical exchange supports a food chain that ultimately sustains the lake's fish population, demonstrating how life can persist even in extreme conditions. Unlocking the secrets of evolution. Lake Cadagno is more than just a scientific curiosity. It is a natural laboratory, offering researchers a rare opportunity to study the conditions that shaped life on early Earth. For instance, one of the most intriguing discoveries in the lake is a phenomenon called bioconvection. As dense mats of Chromatium okeani sink due to gravity, the bacteria must swim back up toward the sunlight to survive. This constant vertical movement stirs the water ever so slightly, mimicking the early mixing processes that might have played a crucial role in the evolution of motility in primitive organisms. By studying these ancient bacterial communities, scientists hope to gain deeper insights into how life adapted to extreme environments and perhaps even uncover clues about the possibility of life on other planets. A living time machine. Few places on Earth offer as vivid a glimpse into the distant past as Lake Cadagno. Here in a remote alpine valley, a piece of ancient Earth endures, untouched by the passage of time. Studying this lake is like peering back billions of years into a world unrecognizable to us today. A world where oxygen was poison, where strange microbial kingdoms ruled the seas, and where the first glimmers of complex life were just beginning to take shape. In this isolated ecosystem, the echoes of Earth's earliest days still whisper beneath the surface, waiting for those bold enough to listen.